Welcome, dear listener, to Whispers of the Night. Tonight, we drift together into a gentle reimagining of a world you may already know, a place where curiosity moves slower than raindrops, and wonder is as soft as velvet shadows. Here, you will wander gardens where roses speak, sip tea that bends time, and follow a smile that lingers in the air long after it fades. You need not stay awake to hear the end. The story will wait for you, patiently, even in your dreams. So settle in, let your thoughts loosen, and take the first quiet step into Alice's dreamland. Before we begin, let us take a few moments to let the world outside fall away. You are here now, in this quiet space, where nothing is urgent and nothing is required of you. Allow yourself to arrive fully in this moment, to rest without effort. Breathe in slowly, as though gathering the cool air of night, and breathe out gently, as though releasing all the weight of the day. Feel your shoulders soften, your jaw unclench, the muscles in your face smoothing into calm. Each breath carries you deeper, as though sinking into a soft river of stillness. Imagine the sky above you, a vast canvas of silver stars, each one a quiet lantern glowing across unimaginable distance. Their light is steady, older than any story, older than any thought. With every exhale, picture those stars glowing a little closer, as if weaving a gentle net of calm around you. Now, notice the steady rhythm of your heartbeat, like the faint drum of life beneath the surface of everything. It does not hurry, it does not demand. It simply continues, carrying you with patience, reminding you that rest is not a pause, but a part of the rhythm itself. As your body softens, imagine yourself lying in a safe and quiet cottage in the forest, the faint smell of wood smoke drifting in, the warmth of a fire nearby, and the sound of the night outside. Still, calm, timeless. You are ready now, ready to drift into the story, to let its gentle rhythm guide you further into peace. The Rose and the Night Spirit. The Garden of Midnight Roses. The night feels gentle, as if the world itself has slowed to breathe alongside you. A hush settles over the garden, a quiet so deep that you can almost hear the sound of starlight falling through the air. The roses before you begin to stir, their petals folded tight in the hours of sunlight, now loosen in the coolness of evening, opening slowly like the eyelids of someone just entering a dream. You watch as one blossom shifts, then another, until the entire garden is alive with the faint shimmer of unfolding petals. It feels as though the roses have been waiting for this moment, waiting for night to offer them its silver touch. Their fragrance is subtle at first, like a whisper carried on the wind. But the longer you stand still, the stronger it becomes. The air is laced with sweetness and mystery, a scent that seems to hold both memory and possibility. You breathe it in, and with every breath, you feel yourself slipping deeper into calm. Roses are among the oldest cultivated flowers, beloved for thousands of years. They have crossed deserts, oceans, and empires, carried by hands that cherished their beauty and their fragrance. Ancient civilizations held them close, not only as decoration, but as symbols. In Egypt, roses were placed in tombs, where petals rested beside the silent bodies of kings and queens, perhaps as a promise that beauty would follow them into the afterlife. In Greece and Rome, roses were scattered on banquet tables, their fragrance rising like soft music through the air, reminding those gathered that life, though fleeting, could be filled with joy. You imagine poets leaning close to roses, searching for words hidden between their petals. You imagine emperors and queens walking through rose gardens, as if through halls of memory, each flower blooming like a chapter in their story. Even now, as you stand in this midnight garden, you feel yourself joined to all those who once stood among roses before you, breathing the same fragrance beneath the same stars. The rose has always been more than a flower. It is a message, a secret, a prayer. In medieval times, roses were carved into church stonework as a reminder of silence, giving rise to the phrase sub rosa, under the rose, meaning a secret kept safe. To speak beneath a rose was to speak words that would never leave the circle of trust. The petals are soft, impossibly soft, like layers of silk that the world has folded again and again until they became something weightless. The edges curl gently, as though holding a memory too fragile to release. Each petal seems to hold the warmth of someone's breath, the trace of a poem written long ago. The garden feels alive, not only with blossoms, but with echoes. You hear footsteps in the past, a gardener watering roses in the courts of Persia, a traveler bringing rose cuttings along the Silk Road, a monk tending roses in the stillness of a cloister. You realize that this flower has crossed continents, not just as a plant, but as an idea, a fragment of beauty that people refused to live without. The rose is both delicate and enduring, surviving in deserts, thriving in valleys, climbing across walls. It is a paradox, as fragile as lace and as strong as memory. Science, too, looks at the rose and finds wonder. The unfolding of petals follows patterns that can be traced with mathematics, spirals and symmetries that repeat across sunflower heads, pine cones, and galaxies. Pulse of life within its cells. Each bloom is a quiet equation written in the language of nature, and yet it feels less like numbers and more like music. The fragrance of the rose, too, is not an accident, but a design. The molecules that create its scent are released most strongly at night, carried on cool air that drifts toward pollinators, moths, beetles, small creatures of the dark who follow the invisible trail. What you inhale now is the rose's way of speaking. its voice in the quiet hours, calling across darkness. And you, listening with every breath, become part of the dialogue, the silent exchange between flower and world. You close your eyes and let the scent carry you. It feels like memory itself, not one memory, but many, blended together until they form something universal. You are reminded of gardens you once walked through, or perhaps only dreamed of. You are reminded of faces you once leaned close to, of words you once whispered, and promises once spoken. The fragrance is a bridge, reaching backward and forward, tying together people, places, and times that might otherwise remain scattered. The roses seem to shift as you breathe, as though they too are listening, as though they too are remembering. Their petals catch the moonlight and hold it, glowing softly like lanterns of silk. Around you, the garden hums with silence, which is not empty, but full of life, full of presence, full of stories that do not need words. You notice one rose, in particular, blooming more brightly than the rest. Its petals unfold layer after layer, as if offering you a path inward. You imagine stepping into the rose itself, walking through corridors of color, each layer opening into another, until you are surrounded by an endless spiral of softness. In that spiral, there is no beginning and no end, only the feeling of being held, of being safe, of being remembered. Time moves differently here. Minutes feel like hours, or perhaps hours feel like seconds. You cannot tell. The garden is both outside you and within you, each breath carrying it deeper into your being. You are not simply in the garden, you are part of it, as essential as fragrance, as still as moonlight. The stars overhead seem to echo the roses below, both unfolding in patterns of light. You realize that a garden and a sky are not so different. Both are fields of blossoming forms. Both are stories written in shapes. Both are invitations to wonder. The roses bloom in silence. The stars burn in silence. And you are held between them, listening to the quiet song that unites them. The night deepens, yet you do not feel tiredness in the heavy sense, but tiredness in the gentle sense, the kind that eases you toward rest, that slows your heartbeat, that tells your mind it may wander softly into dream. The roses seem to understand this, their fragrance drifting like a lullaby, wrapping around you in invisible threads. You think of how something so fragile can carry so much meaning, how petals thinner than paper can hold centuries of memory. You think of how every bloom is temporary, and yet the rose as a whole is timeless, forever unfolding, forever remembered. You think of how, in this garden of midnight, beauty becomes both fleeting and eternal. As you linger with these thoughts, the roses begin to blur in the mist of your breath, soft shapes melting into the night. The garden holds you gently, reminding you that the story of the rose is far from finished, that there are fragrances still to follow, journeys still to take, whispers still to be heard. And as you drift deeper into rest, you sense that the next chapter of this journey waits, carried on rain, carried on scent, carried on the quiet perfume that lingers in the night. perfume in the rain. The garden exhales as the first drops of rain descend from the twilight sky. You hear them before you feel them, a scattered tapping on the leaves, a faint patter that seems to echo from every direction at once. In the hush between each drop, the air shifts, and with it comes a fragrance, both ancient and immediate. The roses around you, bathed in moonlight and water, breathe out their perfume in deeper, richer tones. You inhale slowly, and with each breath you feel as though you are not merely smelling, but listening to the secret chemistry of the night. The scent of roses, you realize, is not a single note. It is a symphony made from countless invisible players, molecules so small that they ride the air like music. Some belong to a family of chemicals called terpenes, light and sweet, quick to evaporate and eager to find their way to your senses. Others, heavier, linger in the cool dampness, carrying a softness that clings to memory. You breathe them in, and though they vanish in seconds, they leave traces behind, echoes in the mind's corridors. Rain sharpens these scents, but not by chance. When the soil drinks the water, hidden oils and geosmin rise from the earth, molecules that tell your nose the story of life underground. Geosmin is the one that makes you think of fresh rain on dry land. A smell so primal that some scientists believe humans evolved to detect it at vanishingly small concentrations. Even the faintest breath of it can carry you back to childhood, gardens, to summer storms, to the mystery of beginnings. Tonight, it binds itself to the perfume of roses, weaving a lullaby of earth and flower. You close your eyes and let the rain guide you. The drops fall like beads along the petals, tapping a rhythm that feels almost like breathing. The air is cool on your skin, yet warm inside your chest as you inhale again. To smell, you realize, is to connect. Every fragrance is a bridge between you and something else, a flower, a tree, the ground beneath your feet, or the past that lingers in your memory. When molecules drift through the air and enter your nose, they bind to receptors, tiny locks within your body that only certain shapes can open. At that moment, the outside world becomes part of you. It is easy to imagine, as you drift deeper into the rhythm of rain, how ancient people might have understood this intimacy. Long before the language of molecules and receptors, they knew the power of fragrance. Roses were pressed into oils in the temples of Mesopotamia, their perfume sealed in alabaster jars that carried whispers of gardens into palaces. In Egypt, petals were floated on water, turned to sacred offerings for gods and for the departed. And in Greece, perfumers tried to trap the spirit of the rose, distilling it into a breath that could survive the passing of seasons. Each attempt was a dream of preservation, to hold onto the fleeting sigh of a flower after it faded. You walk slowly through the garden now, rain soft on your shoulders, and the air carries you between eras. You picture a perfumer's table, copper vessels steaming as petals dissolve into oil. The room is filled with the sharp sweetness of freshly crushed blossoms, and the workers lean close, inhaling as if to measure the quality of their creation, not with sight, but with breath. You imagine how precious each drop must have been, how many roses were needed to yield even a single vial, 1,000 petals distilled to a single tear of fragrance, a reminder that even what feels abundant in the garden is fragile when captured. Back in the moonlit rain, you bend toward a flower heavy with water. A single droplet clings to the edge of a petal, trembling as though caught between two worlds. You breathe it in, and the scent is sharper now, fresher, as if rain has unlocked new notes from within the bloom. This is what scientists call the mingling of plant oils, soil-borne molecules, and rain. But here, under the silver glow of the night, it feels less like chemistry and more like music, a harmony that plays directly into your senses. The fragrance does more than fill the air. It moves through your body, linking itself to memory. You remember how the olfactory system is wired more intimately to the brain than any other sense. The path from scent to memory is short, almost direct. No wonder a single whiff of roses can return you to a forgotten summer evening, to a time when laughter echoed across a courtyard, or when silence wrapped around you like the petals of a bloom. Smell does not just remind you, it returns you. Tonight, the rain carries you backward and forward, into gardens that no longer exist, and into those that have yet to bloom. You linger in this drifting state, thoughts softened by fragrance and rhythm. The rain gathers intensity, though it never feels harsh. Inhaling again, you notice the difference between the roses near you. Some release a sweetness that feels almost fruity, while others lean into spice, or into musk, or into a clarity so delicate it barely lingers. Scientists have cataloged hundreds of volatile compounds in roses, and each variety is a different arrangement of this molecular orchestra. The garden you walk in is not just one scent, but a chorus of possibilities, each flower singing its own story into the night. The thought soothes you that even within one species there is infinite variety. That rain, by awakening the oils of earth and plant, reveals layers hidden from the dry air. You feel the night pressing gently around you, the cool breath of the storm mixing with the warm exhale of roses. It is a reminder that life is always in motion, always transforming, and that even something as small as a droplet of water can change how the world is perceived. You pause beneath an arch of climbing roses, their branches heavy with bloom. Here, the scent is thick, like velvet in the air, and you find yourself breathing more slowly. The rain has become a lullaby now, its rhythm steady and unhurried. The fragrance settles deep into you, not just in your lungs, but in your thoughts. Each inhalation is like opening a door to memory, and each exhalation is like closing it softly, knowing it will remain waiting for you. Perhaps you think this is why roses have been symbols for centuries, not only because of their beauty, but because they are fragile messengers carrying memory and desire in something as intangible as air. You realize how extraordinary it is that molecules so small, unseen and unnoticed, can stir such immense feelings, that in a drop of rain, in the breath of a flower, entire worlds of science and story can unfold. You lean against the trunk of a tree, listening to the rain's quiet applause. Somewhere in the distance, thunder hums, low and content, like the earth itself is breathing in unison with you. Your eyes close, and the scent of roses wraps around your senses one last time, mingling with the damp earth and the soft wind. The night is alive with perfume, with history, with the gentle reminder that to smell is to connect. And as you drift deeper, lulled by rain and fragrance, you wonder what other secrets nature carries in its hidden molecules, what invisible threads of science and story wait in the warmth of sunlight. Roses in myth and memory. You close your eyes, and the rain-softened garden fades into something older, something timeless. The scent of roses lingers in the air, and suddenly they are not just flowers before you, but doors to memory, two stories carried through centuries. You sense how every culture, every heart, has touched the rose with meaning, as though no single bloom could ever be only itself. It is both science and dream, both petal and prayer. The first image that arrives is of the sea, sparkling under Mediterranean light. Out of the foam, Aphrodite rises, and the poets say that roses bloomed where her footsteps touched the earth. Their red became the blush of love, the delicate flame of desire. You picture the goddess brushing her hair with seawater, still dripping, the roses at her feet whispering that love, though soft, is never without thorns. The Greek mind gave the rose to beauty itself, a flower as fragile and as eternal as longing. Then, like a gentle turn of a page, you are elsewhere. In Rome, the Feast of Rosalia is held. Soldiers and families decorate tombs with roses, letting the fragrance carry prayers into the air. The rose here is not only a lover's flower, but a bridge to the departed. You imagine walking through marble pathways, petals scattered across the stones, each one carrying a whisper. Remember me. The air is heavy with sweetness, but also with the weight of memory, proof that beauty and mourning have always been intertwined. The journey continues, and your mind drifts further east. In Persia, the rose is beloved not as a symbol of desire or mourning, but as the beloved itself, the center of the Sufi poet's heart. Jalal al-Din Rumi, Hafez, Sadi, they write of the rose as the face of the divine, a fleeting glimpse of beauty that hides the eternal. The nightingale sings to the rose, cries out for it, circles it with devotion. You imagine yourself in a moonlit Persian garden, the sound of a reed flute in the distance, petals glowing like lanterns. To love the rose is to love God, to surrender yourself to beauty that is too pure to be held. And in Christian memory, the rose is also sacred. It becomes the rosary, beads of devotion strung together to guide prayer. Each bead is a petal, each prayer a fragrance offered to the heavens. The Virgin Mary herself is called the rose without thorns, a symbol of purity untouched by the world's sharpness. You picture candles glowing in the dark of a chapel, incense rising like invisible petals in the air, voices humming through the silence. In the rose you see both tenderness and devotion, both human and divine. As the stories deepen, you realize how often roses are born from pain. In Greek myth, roses spring from the blood of Adonis, the beautiful youth beloved by Aphrodite. He is struck down by a wild boar, and his blood stains the earth red. From that place of sorrow, roses bloom, love and loss, forever entwined. In Roman tales, too, the rose marks grief as much as joy. It is a flower that remembers what has been taken, even as it offers its beauty to those still living. The motif repeats across the world, like an echo carried on the wind. In Arab folklore, a red rose blooms where a lover's tears fall. In some Indian traditions, roses are woven into garlands for weddings, symbols of union, while also decorating funeral pyres, symbols of partying. The same bloom accompanies first embraces and final goodbyes. You feel the resonance of this, that the rose is both cradle and grave, both beginning and end, as though its petals are made from the fabric of time itself. Your mind turns toward color. Not all roses are red, though that is the shade most often. Tied to passion, white roses have long meant innocence, purity, or the silence of the grave. Yellow roses, in some cultures, mean jealousy, while in others, they are the light of friendship. Pink roses are gentler, softer, carrying gratitude, as if their color were a quiet thank you to the world. Even in their hues, roses speak a language, one that humans have been listening to for centuries. Even when the meanings shift like mist, science whispers beneath these myths, quietly guiding the stories without erasing their magic. You recall how colors are not inherent in the petals themselves, but come from pigments, anthocyanins, and carotenoids, molecules shaped by light and environment. These pigments are chemistries, poetry, yet humans read them as messages from the heart. What begins as wavelengths of light becomes a symbol of love, of purity, of loss. The rose teaches you that perception is never separate from meaning. It is through your senses that symbols are born. The myths reach even further, weaving into crowns and empires. In England, the rose is a nation's emblem, white for York and red for Lancaster. Their war remembered as the War of the Roses. Out of conflict came the Tudor rose, both red and white together, symbolizing union after years of division. You imagine banners fluttering, petals scattered at coronations. The flower, not just a garden bloom, but a sign of political destiny. Even kings and queens leaned on the rose's language, shaping identity through its delicate form. Yet the stories do not remain only in history books or poetry. They live in the simple act of offering a rose today. When someone places a single bloom in your hands, they give you not just fragrance and color, but centuries of meaning. You hold Aphrodite's desire, Rome's mourning, Persia's devotion, Mary's prayer, England's crown. You hold myth and memory, layered and folded into petals that last only days, yet echo through time. The rain outside grows softer, and you listen to its rhythm, imagining how each drop is a story falling back into the earth. Roses, in myth, remind you that humans have always sought to anchor the intangible love, loss, devotion, longing in something visible, something fragrant. The flower is fragile, but its meanings endure. It is a paradox, a brief bloom that outlives empires in memory. You breathe deeply and sense how these stories belong not only to history, but also to you. Every rose you encounter carries these whispers, whether you notice them or not. Each petal is a small library of human thought, each fragrance a memory distilled across centuries. In your dream, the garden is filled not just with flowers, but with voices, myths speaking softly, as though they are carried by the night air itself. And as you listen, your thoughts begin to turn, slowly, gently, toward another question. If roses can hold so many myths and meanings, what of their fragrance itself? What secret science hides in the fleeting breath of a rose, the chemistry that drifts invisible in the rain-damp night, guiding memory, shaping dreams? The Night Spirit's Lantern. The garden around you has grown darker now, the kind of darkness that does not threaten, but invites. It is soft, velvety, and complete, wrapping you in a shawl of shadow. Out of this stillness, a small light appears. It glimmers faintly at first, like a firefly rising from the grass. Then it steadies, warm and golden, as though it remembers its purpose. You see the night spirit again, moving slowly, carrying a lantern. Its frame seems to be woven from rose stems, and its panels are glass-touched with a faint blush, as if petals were pressed into them long ago. The glow drifts across the garden path, drawing you into its circle of light. The lantern hums faintly, as though it holds not just flame, but a heartbeat. You walk closer, and as you do, you begin to sense what it means, a reminder of how humans have always carried little suns into the dark, how fire in our hands became more than survival. It became story, memory, and dream. The first lanterns were not much more than vessels, shells to cradle flame. Imagine a hollowed gourd, its walls pierced with holes, a simple container that held a burning wick. Even this crude glow, thousands of years ago, was enough to change the night. No longer was darkness absolute. It had a companion, a rival, a softness in its midst. A lantern was never only about light. It was also about reassurance. To see a glow meant that you were not lost, that someone was awake, that warmth could be found nearby. The night spirit pauses beside a rose bush, lifting the lantern higher. The leaves tremble in its glow, their edges turning to copper and shadow. You are reminded of how in many places lanterns became symbols of guardianship. In ancient China, families lit paper lanterns, not just for brightness, but for celebration, for guiding spirits home, for marking the rhythm of the year. Their delicate frames carried more than oil and flame. They carried wishes, prayers, and fragments of hope folded into their thin skins. Think of the Lantern Festival, when thousands of glowing spheres drift skyward, filling the heavens with flickering constellations of human longing. Each one is fragile, yet together they create a vision of wonder. There is science in it too. The heated air within expands, grows lighter than the surrounding sky, and so the lantern lifts, rising as though weightless. The physics is simple, yet the effect is profound. A lantern becomes both an equation and a poem, both buoyancy and blessing. The night spirit begins to walk again, and you follow. The path winds toward a low stone wall, where the lantern's light gathers in the cracks of moss and lichen. You notice how shadows stretch long and soft, moving gently with each sway of the flame. This is the language of lanterns, not a sharp command, but a quiet suggestion, a dance between brightness and shadow. Long before electricity, communities depended on such light. In medieval towns, watchmen carried lanterns through sleeping streets. Their glow was a sign of safety, a wandering star that reminded villagers that someone still guarded the silence. In Japan, stone lanterns were placed in gardens and temple grounds. Their fire meant to illuminate not just paths, but hearts, encouraging contemplation. In Morocco, pierced metal lanterns spread patterned shadows across walls, so that light itself became ornament, a living artwork that changed with every flicker. You think of how roses and lanterns share a kinship. Both are delicate containers, one for fragrance, one for flame. Both are vulnerable to time and wind, and yet both persist, returning again and again as symbols of care, devotion, and longing. To give someone a rose is to offer beauty that fades yet remains in memory. To give someone a lantern is to promise that they need not walk in darkness alone. The night spirit holds the lantern near your face now, and you watch the flame closely. At its base, it glows blue, the part where fuel and air mix most efficiently. Above it, the flame lifts into orange and gold, a delicate balance of combustion. Science whispers in the fire, heat excites atoms. Electrons leap and fall, releasing photons that your eyes read as light. Each flicker is a tiny storm of energy, ordered yet unpredictable. The flame is never still, yet always itself. You breathe slowly, letting your eyes half close. The lantern's sway is hypnotic, almost like a pendulum. For centuries, people have watched flames like this to soothe themselves. Before books, before clocks, before screens, there was the hearth fire, the candle, the lamp. In its quiet glow, minds slowed. Stories were told, songs were sung, and sleep was gently invited. Fire was not just a tool, it was an anchor of rhythm, the heartbeat of the night. A breeze stirs, and the lantern's light shifts across the garden. You notice how even small movement changes everything. Shadows lengthen, highlights vanish, and the space feels new again. This is the poetry of light, that it paints the world differently with each breath of wind. Our ancestors must have felt this wonder too, watching how a single flame could remake their surroundings. Perhaps this is why so many myths link lanterns with spirits, guides, and unseen companions. To walk with a lantern was to walk with mystery. The night spirit places the lantern upon the stone wall. Its glow rests there like a star brought down to earth. You imagine the first lamps made of olive oil, their clay bodies shaped by hand, their wicks drawing fuel upward in quiet capillary rise. Such simple physics, and yet from it came warmth, vision, and the comfort of company. The lantern in front of you feels like a descendant of all those ancient fires, carrying their memory in its fragile frame. Above, the sky is deepening, the stars faint but steady. You realize that the lantern is not meant to replace the night, but to converse with it, just as the rose converses with the air by releasing fragrance. The lantern converses with darkness by offering glow. Neither conquers, both share. You feel yourself drifting, lulled by the rhythm of your own breath and the quiet hum of the flame. The lantern is no longer just an object, it is a bridge, connecting past and present, earth and sky, body and dream. You close your eyes, and the glow lingers behind your lids, warm and alive, like a sun that agrees to be gentle. And as you rest in this glow, you begin to wonder what else the night spirit might carry. If a lantern can guide your steps and calm your thoughts, perhaps another object might carry a different kind of wisdom. Perhaps light is only the beginning, and sound or scent or silence itself may become the next lantern in the night. Petals across the Silk Road. The lantern sways ahead of you, its glow brushing over sand and stone. The night spirit walks slowly, letting your feet adjust to the softness of the desert path. The air is cool here, carrying not only the silence of night, but also the faint memory of journeys long past. You can almost hear the bells of camels, their steady rhythm like a heartbeat against the endless expanse of dunes. You follow this rhythm deeper into the night, and the spirit turns its lantern toward a vision of the Silk Road, a path not drawn on maps, but carved into the earth by footsteps, hooves, and the passage of centuries. The road was never a single thread, but a weaving, a tapestry stretching from China to the Mediterranean, carrying not only goods, but stories, ideas, and scents. Among the many treasures carried along these roads, one flower held a quiet, enduring place, the rose. Dried petals packed in cloth bundles, jars of rose water sealed with wax, and tiny vials of fragrant oil nestled between silk and spice. The rose was more than beauty. It was medicine, perfume, and symbol, a gift carried across deserts and mountains like a whisper of gardens far away. You pause at a memory. In Persia, roses grew in gardens, designed like stars, arranged so that flowing water reflected moonlight into pools. Here, rose water was distilled, a process perfected with copper stills. The steam carried fragrance, condensed into droplets, and collected as a liquid that seemed to hold the very soul of the flower. Persian traders carried this water westward, its scent clinging to fabrics, its coolness a balm for weary travelers. And further east, in China, roses mingled with peonies, and chrysanthemums in gardens tended with care. Poetry praised their form, while physicians noted their healing power. Alongside tea and silk, petals made their way across borders, tucked in with scrolls and medicines. Some said rosewater could soothe the heart, calm the mind, or heal the skin. Science today shows hints of truth in these beliefs. Compounds in roses reduce inflammation, lift mood, and quiet the nervous system. Yet, in those days, the proof was not in the chemistry, but in the comfort one felt when fragrance met breath. You walk further, and the desert gives way to a vision of a caravanserai, a roadside inn. Lanterns flicker at its gates, welcoming travelers. Within its walls, merchants from distant lands rest side by side. A man from Damascus unwraps a cloth bundle, revealing dried roses, their red darkened to the hue of wine. Another trader offers saffron threads, glowing like captured sun. A woman pours tea, its steam carrying leaves that once grew in high mountains, kissed by clouds. The air is thick with scents, spices, oils, incense, and yet the roses remain distinct, delicate, persistent, like a soft note in a song of many instruments. You sit quietly, listening to the murmurs of trade. The rose is not only an object here, but also a bridge. It speaks without language, its scent dissolving borders. In Damascus, roses were gathered by the thousands to make attar, an essence so concentrated that a single drop perfumed entire garments. In India, rose garlands adorned temples and weddings, a symbol of devotion and love. In Europe, roses became emblems of nobility and secrecy. The phrase sub rosa, under the rose, meant a truth whispered in confidence. The night spirit looks back at you, its lantern casting shadows shaped like petals across the sand. You realize how much of human history unfolded under the guidance of flowers. A rose could travel farther than armies, last longer than empires, and connect people who never met. Along the Silk Road, its fragrance touched the silk weavers of China, the physicians of Persia, the poets of Arabia, and the painters of Europe. Each culture carried the rose into its own stories, yet always the heart of the flower remained the same. You walk again, this time across a bridge of stars. The road seems to lift from earth into sky, its stones replaced by constellations. You understand then that the Silk Road was not only a line upon land, but a flow, a river of exchange. Much like the Milky Way itself, ideas traveled along it as swiftly as goods. Music, mathematics, astronomy, all shared beneath lanterns, beside fires, among caravans, and roses traveled with them, not as necessities, but as luxuries that spoke of comfort, beauty, and care. Even in the harshness of the desert, petals were carried like a promise of gardens to return to. The spirit pauses where the starry road touches down into a quiet valley. Here you see terraced gardens of Kashmir, where Mughal emperors once walked at twilight. They ordered fountains to be built, so water danced among roses, lilies, and cypresses. Roses here were woven into carpets, their patterns endless, repeating like dreams that never quite end. Traders carried both the carpets and the flowers along the Silk Road, so that distant lands might share the beauty of these gardens. Your steps are slower now, as if sleep itself is a caravan guiding you onward. you notice the way science nestles into this story, gently hidden inside petals. Roses contain compounds that soothe the nervous system, antioxidants that protect cells, scents that lower heart rate and quiet breathing. You imagine ancient travelers already sensing this, even without knowing the words or reasons. A single breath of rose water after days in the desert might have felt like medicine or even a prayer. The spirit's lantern flickers again, and you see roses pressed into paper, a practice of scholars and botanists who wished to preserve what could not last. In the great libraries of the Islamic Golden Age, rose diagrams were drawn alongside texts of medicine and philosophy. Later, in Europe, roses filled herbals and gardens alike, their paths mapped not by caravans, but by printing presses. The rose that once crossed deserts, now crossed centuries. You pause, feeling the gentle weight of history carried in a single bloom. How many hands held petals before you? How many languages named its fragrance? And how many nights, like this one, were softened by its presence? The rose is fragile, yet it endures. Its scent fades quickly, yet the memory of it lingers in stories, gardens, and dreams. The lantern dims, and the spirit gestures forward. The silk road dissolves into the hush of night, but the fragrance remains, as though the desert air itself has been steeped in roses. You feel yourself drifting, as if carried not on camelback, but on waves of memory and possibility. And you wonder, if roses could travel across deserts and centuries, what other seeds of wonder might have moved with them, hidden among the petals, waiting to bloom in the minds of dreamers. The rose that waits for dawn. The garden is hushed tonight, wrapped in a softness that feels like a blanket of silence. You walk slowly among the rows of roses, their petals heavy with the last glimmers of evening light. The air carries the faintest trace of sweetness, a perfume half hidden in the cool folds of night. Somewhere beyond the wall of trees, the world continues, footsteps on distant streets, winds moving through unseen valleys, but here, time bends into stillness. It is as if the roses themselves breathe slower now, pausing, waiting for the tender approach of dawn. You pause, noticing something subtle. Some blossoms seem to lean inward, closing themselves as if they too are preparing to rest. The petals fold not in haste, but in patience, like a hand gently curling around what it loves most. Their motion is almost imperceptible, yet you feel it, the rhythm beneath the silence. Roses, like you, follow the quiet pull of a clock you cannot see, one set not by hours on a watch, but by the hidden language of light. This is circadian rhythm, the gentle cycle that governs nearly every living thing in your body. It tells you when to wake and when to sleep. In these roses, it signals when to open toward the sun and when to gather inward, conserving what is precious until the light returns. Though invisible, it is everywhere, humming through cells and petals alike. orchestrating a balance that has been unfolding for millions of years. You walk further, your footsteps sinking into damp soil that releases a darker fragrance, rich and grounding. A single rose catches your eye, its petals already drawn in, as though listening closely to some secret instruction from the night. You lean near and breathe its scent, softer now than in the brightness of day. Even fragrance follows rhythm, rising and fading with the cycle of light. Scientists once studied this with jasmine and tobacco plants, noticing how the intensity of their perfume swells in the evening when pollinators, like moths, are most awake. The roses here, too, have their own timing, their sweetness most vivid when it matters most. You remember how, in your own body, rhythms shape your days. There is the gentle rise of alertness in the morning, the dip in the early afternoon, the slow cascade toward sleep at night. Hormones, temperature, and heart rate sway like reeds in water, all following the arc of an inner sun. The roses mirror this pattern, not in thought, but in presence. Their circadian rhythm is guided by light-sensitive proteins, molecules that measure the world as carefully as any clock, shifting the genes within each cell to keep time with the sky. You picture how centuries ago, gardeners may have noticed this without words, like circadian or protein. They saw instead that flowers turned to the sun, that some blossoms welcomed the morning earlier than others, that petals closed in the dark like shutters on a cottage. The poet Carl von Linné, in the 18th century, dreamed of a floral clock, a garden arranged so that each plant's blooming hour marked the passing of time. Dandelions opening at dawn, bindweed unfurling at 8, hawkbit glowing at noon, evening primroses releasing their light at dusk, and roses, steady companions, whose timing spoke less of hours and more of seasons. Waiting for warmth, leaning into light, your breathing slows as you imagine that clock, each flower a living bell, striking not with sound, but with presence. Roses within it would be the patient keepers of transitions, guardians of the turning points between night and day. Their rhythms do not rush, but extend, like the slow cadence of your own breath as you listen to this story. You sit now on a stone bench by the garden's edge, and the night spirit drifts close, a shimmer at the corner of vision, its voice low, like wind moving through reeds. It tells you that rhythms are not only in flowers, but in everything around you. Oceans rise and fall with tides, guided by the pull of the moon. Trees breathe through the seasons, opening leaves in spring, releasing them in autumn's sigh. Even the stars you see above move in great cycles, spinning the night across centuries. The rhythm of a rose is just one thread in a fabric that stretches across cosmos and time. You close your eyes and imagine the life of a single rose petal. Born in the tight embrace of a bud, it slowly unfurls, guided not only by genes, but by light itself. During the day, it stretches outward, gathering sunlight that fuels the plant's quiet alchemy of photosynthesis. At night, as the air cools and dew begins to bead on its edges, it curves inward again, not from fatigue, but from pattern, from a deep evolutionary memory that whispers, conserve, protect, rest. Each cycle, repeated endlessly, shapes not only the rose's survival, but its harmony with the living world. A breeze stirs, carrying with it the hush of midnight. The roses sway gently, a choreography so subtle it could be mistaken for stillness. You realize that your own body too sways in this choreography. Cells deep within your brain, in a cluster called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, receive signals from your eyes about the light outside. Even in darkness, they keep time, guiding hormones like melatonin to rise, urging you toward rest. Just as the rose folds inward against the night, your mind softens, your limbs grow heavy, your thoughts gather like petals around a dream. The spirit whispers again, telling you that rhythms are not rigid schedules, but flowing streams. Grow longer in summer or shorter in winter. They adjust when a rose is moved from one garden to another, learning the new song of the sky. Your body, too, learns when you cross oceans, when time zones shift beneath your feet. The tiredness you feel, the dissonance, is your inner sun recalibrating to meet the outer one. It is a reminder that time is not absolute, but relational, a dance between inner and outer light. You let this thought drift as you watch the roses, their shadows cast long and delicate in moonlight. Somewhere, in places where the sun has not yet set, other roses are still wide open, burning with daylight. And in yet another place where dawn is about to break, petals are beginning to stir, loosening from their night's embrace. Across the planet, roses mark not one moment, but countless, a mosaic of time that never stops turning. You lean back, the stone cool against your shoulders, and listen to the silence between cricket calls. You feel your body attune itself to this garden, your own breath syncing with the rhythm of flowers. The night spirit tells you softly that this is the gift of circadian rhythm, the reminder that rest is not an end, but part of a larger cycle, a necessary folding inward before opening. Again, the stars shift slowly overhead, their light reaching you across unthinkable spans of time. The roses glimmer faintly, dew catching what starlight it can. You think of how even these stars have their own rhythms, births and deaths, pulses of brightness, cycles that last millions of years. And still, in their vastness, they move with the same patience you see in the closing of a single flower. The garden grows even quieter now, as if the earth itself is drawing breath. You feel your thoughts loosen, like petals slipping into the night wind. Sleep gathers at the edges of your mind, gentle and inevitable. The roses around you wait, silent keepers of time, teaching you through their stillness what it means to rest in rhythm. And as the horizon begins its faint glow, promising dawn's arrival, you wonder if roses listen to the sky. What do they hear in the first note of morning light? And how does the world change when that note is played again? And now, the night holds you gently. The story will carry you the rest of the way into that quiet place where dreams rise and morning feels far, far away.